Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Bishwajit Ghosh, Professor of Sociology from the University of Bardhaman, West Bengal. I will be talking about a module entitled Working Class Movements in India. This falls within the paper called Social Movement of Sociology paper. Now, in this module, we will be talking about the issues and challenges of working class movement in India. You are aware of the fact that there are different reasons for which working class movement has arisen in India. The dictates of different factors could be seen in the way trade union movement has taken shape, the factors for their strength, the factors for their weaknesses, particularly in the context of globalization, and the way trade unions have responded to those challenges will be discussed in this module. Now, if you look into the history of industrialization and development of capitalism in India, you would be knowing that it was a very slow process until India took independence. In fact, until the middle of 19th century, coal mining was the only industry in the modern sense. The course of Indian industrialization was controlled to suit the interest of the British colonialists. They didn't allow Indian industry to grow till the First World War, and in fact Indian industries grew rapidly only after the Second World War. So obviously factory employment, which is very much a requirement for any kind of trade union activity, became much later, and the earlier protest was seen in the Howrah station, railway workers of Howrah station in the year 1862. There were around 1,200 railway workers participated in that protest. By 1890s, strikes became a frequent activity of industrial workers in India, involving more and more workers. Now, the issues that confronted the workers were low wages, long working hours, poor working conditions, and the like. And most of these incidences took place in cotton and jute industry, in the railways, mines, ports and docks, mint and presses, plantation and other non-factory concerns. Let me now talk about the formation of trade unions in India. The first organization to be formed on the line of a modern trade union was the Madras Labour Union, and it was formed in the year 1918. But it was a localized trade union. In 1920, another localized trade union was formed in the textile industry. The name of the trade union was Textile Labour Association. It was formed in Ahmedabad with guidance and help from Mahatma Gandhi. But these localized trade unions, that means Textile Workers Union in Ahmedabad or Madras Labour Union in Madras, could not cater to the needs of all India demands of all India workers, which were being raised in the context of demand for independence. So obviously a critical moment in the history of Indian working class began from 1920 with the formation of All India Trade Union Congress, in brief AITUC. AITUC was formed with the basic purpose of representing the interest of Indian workers to the world and united bodies. Because the leadership of Indian independence struggle understood that the demands of the workers should be raised at the global level, and the demand is basically independence from British rule. Let me now talk about the strength and weaknesses of trade union movement in a country like India. Now, it is true that trade union movement became a part of the wider struggle and gained strength and vitality from the latter. Trade union movement also took a political character from the very beginning. I have been telling you about the formation of AITUC, which was basically formed by political leaders who are leading the nationalist movement. They were the inspirators and leaders asking workers to unite. So, as and when people got fragmented on political lines, trade unions also got fragmented. That is another history of trade unionism. You have as in many number of trade unions as you have number of political parties. In fact, all political parties, including regional political parties, today have trade unions. So this is split and inter-union rivalry, split in the union for political reasons, inter-union rivalry for leadership issue, and then the issue of state intervention. State emerged as a major, power in dictating what labor should do and what industrial relations, the type of industrial relations that take place. So obviously, a trade union, depending on the strength of the political party in power, has to color itself or take help of a particular political party. So the failure of trade unions to cope with the challenges, particularly of liberalization and after thing, these were actually shown much earlier, particularly from the days of independence. Now, one particular thing that has happened since the formation of AITUC is rise of political unionism in India. Ideological discussions about the role of trade unionism started just after the formation of AITUC. What workers should do? Should the freedom of India become the major agenda for working class? Or working class movement should stress on class issues? Now, a communist like M.N. Rai, Dange, nationalists like Gandhi, Nehru, and moderates like M.M. Joshi and B.B. Giri, they were giving different arguments, different logics about the way workers should unite. In fact, after independence, leaders like Nehru and other, B.B. Giri, they started arguing that there is no need for trade union at all because we have got independence, and AITUC was basically formed with the demand for India's independence from the British. So since the basic demand has achieved, there is no need for working class movement, and if at all trade unions remain, they should play a responsible role. So different debates among different groups of people on the nature of relationship between trade unions and political parties became a major agenda for all discourses on trade union movement. As a result of all these, fragmentation and multiplication has been one of the consequences of trade unions' loyalty in India. For instance, AITUC suffered a split in 1929 and in 1931 because one segment of AITUC leaders became influenced by spirits of an ideology of socialism and communism. They started arguing for working class revolution. They started arguing for attacking the capitalists, which probably the section of nationalists, including Gandhi, did not want. Then in 1935 and 1940, during the intensified nationalist and imperialist struggle, again, the unity of workers could be forged for a particular moment. That means, in a particular context, when the workers and different sections of Indian masses were fighting against the colonialists, they got united. But after independence, after the struggle is already won, that kind of unity is broken down. The new issues which took over are the ideological issues, strategic issues to how to organize a particular union and what should be the demand of that particular union. Today, association of trade unions with political party is a reality. Parties with sectarian goal, nativistic feeling, surprisingly, they are also forming and organizing workers. The role of political party is in organizing the trade union is both positive and negative. Positive in the sense that I have seen during my research that many workers are not just interested in getting associated with the trade union activity because they work for 8 to 10 hours a day, and after that they go back to home, again have to work at home. So many a time they do not participate in the trade union activities. It is only the politically committed leaders and workers who take part in the day-to-day activities of a trade union. So often it is seen that political parties provide the base for any unionism. Often the political party cadres, as in Bengal, stood for the rights of trade union members and workers. If a strike is called, it is not the worker who provide support, it is rather the political party activists, their members and supporters who come in favor of a particular demand of the workers. Often the leaders of a particular trade union is threatened by the employer, he or she is sacked for becoming a leader. But if a political party leader becomes a trade union leader, the employer becomes afraid of him if he is powerful in the locality and if he or she belongs to the ruling party in power. But that is one additional thing that brings in alternative factors. What are these alternative factors? When an outside leadership, political leader enters into a trade union, becomes its leader, it is he or she who dictates what should a particular trade union do. Now the agenda of a particular trade union becomes the agenda of the political party. Now that dependency on the political party, that dependency on the state actually has boomerang or rather eaten up the strength of working class struggle in India. One major issue of trade union struggle in India is stress on economic issues. Now scholars like Ramaswamy has said that political issues, they do crop up in trade union struggle, but in normal day-to-day functioning, the major demands of all trade union activities are in fact increase in wage rate, increase in other economic benefits, so on and so forth. So going by the logic of Marxian theoretical arguments about the strength of political or the limits of trade union struggle, one may argue that economism is one of the limits of trade union struggle also in India. Many a time our trade unions haven't seen beyond a factory. If you do not see beyond a factory, what happens is that you get restricted to the boundarical or geographical limit of a particular factory. You don't develop solidarity with the workers who are fighting in the closer by factory. What happens when you are faced with a crisis? They also do not support you. So there are fragmentation on the political line, there are fragmentation on the basis of leadership line, there are inter and intra-union rivalry. Along with that, you do not see much ahead of your schedule and do not develop a much wider unity, which is very much required for any kind of unionism. One major threat of trade union movement, which began particularly after the formation of INTUC, was the goal of responsible unionism. INTUC has started arguing that now workers should behave responsibility, should not call strike, should not go for gherao, and should demand moderately because our capitalists are Indian capitalists. Now that kind of argument has also fragmented trade union, limited the strength of trade union movement, and often the management also intervened in creating loyalty base among the workers. Mamkuttam has seen that in TISCO in particular, the trade union which is the major trade union is in fact a dalal union. So responsible unionism and dalal unionism, these are all limits of the working class struggle in India. Obviously, if you argue workers to go for peaceful struggle, it would put you under certain limits. You cannot argue only for industrial harmony, only for industrial or responsible unionism. One major issue of trade union struggle has been the rise of independent unions. Independent unions have become a reality because they are protesting against the kind of political and business unionism which was in sway in India. Many of the unions which were formed particularly after 1970s, from mid 70s, they started detaching themselves from political party because the leaders of the trade union who belong to political party, they dictate the terms and conditions. They ask workers to participate in a particular struggle and remain absent from other struggle. Now, whenever there is a need, there is a crisis being felt by the workers, the leaders are not available because leaders come only particularly before election, for instance. So these independent unions could create a large-scale impact on the strength of trade union movement because it is they who started organizing the unorganized workers despite some failure here and there. It is they who started arguing that unionism should be, should take different spirit. If you look into the membership strength of union, in the long history of India's trade union struggle, obviously you will be surprised to see that till liberalization, the number of workers who have joined the industry are very few. In fact, only 7 to 8% of those so-called workers are unionized. That was one of the reasons for which actually the trade union leaders and the political party affiliation is blamed. That means there is a disproportionate growth in the number of trade unions. Number of unions are increasing, but the membership is not increasing. One of the reasons for this is this, you are concentrated in the formal sector only, organized sector. You are not picking up the issues of unorganized labor. Now, the unorganized workers are on the rise, but your strength among the unorganized workers is limited. So obviously, there is a situation where the number of unions submitting return has declined gradually over the years. So you know very little about the total membership strength of many of the unions. The claims and counterclaims are debated in the trade union struggle. So the question is posed, are unions dying? It has been a theoretical argument that since the type of work and the kind of work system has changed, so unions are no more required in the post-Fordist era. That has been a theoretical debate. Let us look into the way trade unions scenario speak about Indian reality. As against the new liberal axiom that unions are dying, the aggregate membership of all central unions has rather increased from 12.2 million in 1989 to 89.5 million in 2012. This is a tremendous growth in the number of workers affiliated to union. 3 new bodies of unions with 5 lakh more members are added to the central trade unions. These are Self-Employed Women's Association, that is SHEBA, Labour Progressive Front, CPIM affiliated All India Central Council of Trade Unions. They are added with the list. Government also has recognized, the figures that I am all talking about, these are government figures, that the average membership per trade union submitting return in India has increased from 747 in 2000 to 1919 in 2012. So on the whole, there has been increase in the number of workers affiliated to trade unions, and the increase is mostly seen in the organization of unorganized workers, which is a new beginning in India, particularly after globalization. Now, one question often is asked, why do at all we need unions? Ramaswamy once explained it better way, that we need union or we need association of human being wherever there is exploitation, wherever there is vulnerability. So obviously, had unions not been existed, even workers in the large and registered factories would have lost much. Maybe it is true that our brand of unionism in the formal sector could not achieve much. They rather relied on the state and political party. But had it not been there, probably the exploitation of workers would have been much more. Then, considering the gains that unions have made for the small section of workers, it has been argued that there is aristocracy of labor. Mark Holmstrom first put forward this study in a work on South Indian factory workers, but he himself revised this theory and later said that, well, it is not just the differences between formal and informal is not just tight boundary, it is rather steep slope. That means the aristocracy of labor thesis cannot be supported, because even within the formal sector, there are workers who are unprotected, who are unaristocratic. So therefore, the dichotomy between formal and informal sectors cannot be sustained so far as trade union movement is concerned. You need to organize both formal and informal sectors. Obviously, there are new challenges before unions, particularly after globalization. Market globalism has posed serious challenges to our old unions for the first time in the history. They were depending on the state. now the state is withdrawing. State is rather passing laws to protect and promote capitalism. So what do you do now? You have been relying on the state laws. You have been demanding one after another about this law and that law. And state has passed different kinds of laws. Now the state is asking for a revision of those laws. So there is exit policy, there is a voluntary retirement scheme, there is shrinking of the organized sector, and obviously there is rise of unorganized activity even within the formal sector. I have been telling you about 97% of workers being engaged in the informal sector. Now there are several instances where actually trade unions have taken up the challenge. That means the consequences of liberalization could be seen in different way. The trade unions are also protesting. That means the leaders of the existing union have understood that they cannot protest in the way they were protesting, and they need to take up new strategies. And the new beginning has begun in India. The old unions do not fit into the structure that has come, and this is understood by all trade unions today, that the consequences of liberalization are to be taken up very seriously. And unless and until these issues, for instance, there is a gendering of jobs, right? Unless and until these new issues are taken care of, more and more women are employed in the informal sector, and many of these women, they just do not any trade union. There are also elite workers employed in the computer sector industry, who skilled workers who do not in fact like to join the rank of those who work manually. So there are challenges like electronic technology is breaking down the types of work that are being done. Something is being done in some industries, something is being done in other industry, and you are just assembling. There is subcontracting taking place in large number. Many a time the trade unions find it difficult to organize workers who do not work under any employer, because the employer himself is a subcontractor. So due to such changes, the responses of our trade unions are also changing. What are the responses? First of all, they have stopped calling strike here and there. If you look into the number of strikes and lockouts, strikes are declining, whereas lockouts are on the rise. That means unions are defensive, employers are offensive. Secondly, they are also developing unity of workers across across units, across industry. Now they are going for national, regional and sectoral and enterprise level unity. These are some of the things that has happened. If you replace strike and gherao with a new kind of strategy, that has an impact on the public life. For instance, if you walk on the street, let people know about your issues and wear black badges and tell people that these are the atrocities committed on you, probably you will be targeting the public at large. So instead of trade union asking for a favorite from the employer, they're going either targeting the state or targeting the public at large using the internet basis in order to address the situation, because they've understood that often becoming launching a bloody struggle, launching a prolonged conflict would not going to give them any benefit. So the struggles are less prolonged, struggles are much larger in base. So the major change that one can notice in the perspective of a trade union is that they are targeting the greater enemy. They are not targeting an enemy which is at the local level. They understand that capitalism as a system need to be challenged at the much larger level, and they are also trying to get the draw the attention of public at large. As a result, there are issues which are not being picked up by earlier by trade union have become the major targets of trade union struggle. What are those issues? Unemployment, poverty, human rights, social security, occupational training of the unemployed, issues of contract labor, rights of women, concern for clean environment. So obviously you can see the whole lot of issues which were issues of social movement as such are now being targeted or taken up by trade union leadership. They are also expanding their horizons to organize the unorganized section of labor. All major trade unions today have the goal to organize the unorganized workers. Such a realization has also prompted some NGOs to come forward and form trade unions like body. And as I have already told you, new unions are added with much larger base, and this is one of the reasons for which there has been significant rise in central membership of all trade unions during the last 5 years. Let me now conclude the discourse on trade union movement in India. Trade unionism in India has in fact acquired a new significance in the new economy, because at one point of time it was argued that trade unions have died their natural death. With the new Fordist era, with the globalization coming, with the employers favoring the capitalist, and trade unions not being able to expand their horizon beyond the so-called formal sector, it was argued that there is no future of trade union struggle. But from that emerged the new possibility. The new social movement perspective, which is one of the subject of a different module under this social movement paper, tells you about the way trade unions are picking up new issues. Civil society is coming forward in order to provide support to trade unionism, and trade unions are also joining the hands of those who are fighting for human rights. The issue of corruption, for instance, is an agenda of major trade unions. The issue of gender, the issue of environment is an agenda for trade union struggle. So obviously these pro-people social movements have much larger support base in a country like India, and often our trade unions are becoming global in reaching out to the local. They're using internet basis to train their leaders. They're using internet technology to connect to workers and to raise issues. So this is probably much more democratic in the history of trade union struggle, because not only they are becoming internally democratic in linking themselves with the wider issues, they are also raising wider issue of social justice and human rights. So this is a new beginning, and the history of trade unionism will definitely take a new shape and will definitely dictate over the years to come. We do hope that trade unions won't die a natural death, rather they would resurge itself in the new context and new beginning. So with this, I'm ending this discussion on the history of trade unionism movement. Thank you very much for your patience for hearing.